So it's raining pretty good today, so if you guys are hearing rain in the background or hitting the car, please forgive me. So today I wanted to talk about taking responsibility. So there's a lot of different ways that people take responsibility or don't take responsibility. In the scope of a breach, a lot of times legal is encouraging you not to take responsibility because they don't want you to get sued for negligence and things like that. If you experience a breach and it was because you hadn't patched your servers in 5 years, and that came out in the forensic report that it wasn't, you suffered this breach because you did not patch, then you could be sued for negligence. So you're instructed explicitly by legal not to take responsibility for doing that and to not divulge that piece of information. So that advice, is money-saving advice at the time and could save you millions of dollars in lawsuits. So you have to weigh that decision against your moral compass. To me, that's an okay omission to make. I'll omit the root cause from the world if it's gonna, if that would cause, millions of dollars of lawsuits because an admin was too busy to patch a server or decided not to patch a server because of a legitimate business reason, like that server is fragile or the application can't take a patch or whatever. So that's one thing. But other things, when you choose to straight up lie to your employees or your user base, your customers, about, what was affected, what data was breached, etc., that's a lie. And legal won't encourage you to lie. They'll put the brakes on notification until they can be sure that the breach occurred and what was breached and for whom. But they know it's their regulatory obligation to for almost every state to notify users of private data being breached. Every state has their own law. It's not a federal thing about PII breach. There are other kinds of breaches also, EHR with HIPAA records, which is a nationwide thing. It is a federal thing. So there's lots of things to consider. Legal will guide you through this. But what I want in the scope of this, car rant, I want to talk about your corporate culture for taking responsibility. It comes down to each person. And it comes down to how you run your teams. And it comes down to how you run your business. Each person should have some level of ownership and extreme ownership and moral compass and sense of responsibility for things. When there's a problem, you should be willing to admit it to your users, your customers, your partners, your vendors, your business owners, your shareholders, stakeholders. You should be able to admit what happened. And let's take it to a non-breach scenario. If there's something going on in the company, you prefer to have full transparency in general, right? I do too. I've worked with business owners, though, that kept everything a secret, and there was no transparency, and nobody knew what was going on until there was a need to know for them to. So that really ruins culture. People don't feel trusted. People don't feel like they belong, things like that. You should build your corporate culture, in my opinion, so that people feel safe to share. They feel like it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share. And part of the whole blameless post-mortem and part of the Kanban concept of admitting when something went wrong and immediately and say, okay, I screwed this up. Everybody please help me. That mindset only comes from a place of vulnerability and safety. If you don't establish a culture of safety for your employees, then if they make a mistake, they're going to be afraid to tell you. They'll never own that mistake. They'll cover it up every which way they can. They'll cover it up to the customer. They'll cover it up to you. They'll cover it up to their coworkers and the users. So I think that, sorry, I just had to turn my wipers up a little faster. It's coming down. But yeah, so I think that responsibility taking comes from demonstration. Everybody in the company should feel and know your culture is one of taking responsibility. And a lot of owning the mistakes may cost you some money, but it'll gain you customer goodwill. So, okay, you made a mistake, refund the customer for this product. Yes, it costs you some money. And it may sting, but it'll gain you some customer goodwill. But if you tell the customer, no, I'm not going to refund you, you got to eat this, that's not going to make the customers love you. And as soon as their contract's up, they're probably going to look to leave you. So that kind of ownership and that kind of working with people comes from a place of clarity and transparency. Now, when you get breached, that kind of gets transmitted to the customers at that time too. You should have a layer of a level of transparency. It's okay to keep the certain things or the details that really you don't want the threat actor to know and things like that out of the news. But you should be able to do a status update on your website during a breach. And PR notifications, you should have those prepared and be able to take ownership, take responsibility, communicate what's going on. You should be able to let people know that, hey, we're experiencing a cyber event. Right now we're trying to determine where our breach is occurring and what data is exposed, if any, and if you are affected, we will let you know, that kind of thing. You should be able to communicate that, and then when you do have more information, let them know. We experienced a breach in our password databases, pardon the yawn. So all of the password databases have been breached, that kind of thing, right away. That failing to share information is indicative of you being a liar, and is not going to gain any goodwill. And we see this with companies all the time with breaches. Some people want to say right away to the customer, and cyber legal always slows them down initially in the breach, like, don't come front page with this stuff, like, decide what you're going to share. So there's a little bit of discipline you have to have there working with legal and PR. But I encourage people to develop a culture of transparency and a culture of responsibility and taking responsibility and ownership of a problem, and take that well beyond cyber. Take that to everywhere in the organization. Take that to, your employees should feel safe sharing whatever mistakes happen and not worry about blame. Blame shouldn't even be a part of it. Blame and fear are what are stopping you here. If you exterminate blame and fear from your organization and just work from a place of transparency, ownership, and responsibility, then you can finally get to a kind of a level set where you're able to operate taking risks in the organization. People aren't afraid of what happens if I fail. You're able to, innovate quickly because people are excited about, the opportunity to fail. The fail fast idea doesn't happen if you're afraid to share, and if you're afraid to talk, if you're afraid of blame, you're afraid of failure, then failing fast is a bad thing, and you're afraid of getting fired. So then you're in a organization that only rewards excellence but not failure. It's hard to take risks and feel at home in that organization. And really, I feel that people that work in that kind of atmosphere for a long career, I don't know how they do it. Because honestly, I was in that kind of situation, in that blame atmosphere for about a year, and I wanted to, it was very bad on mental health. Like, I can't imagine living in it for a long time. So those of you who are business owners or manage teams, I encourage you to think about transparency and leadership and, developing culture in a way that is, leveraging honesty and responsibility and extreme ownership and things like that when you're leading. And it comes from you. It comes from you setting that example. If you set an example that you're going to get in trouble when you fail, then people are never going to want to take a risk. People are never going to want to do anything because they're afraid that if they do try something and fail, they're going to get fired or they're going to get yelled at. So that's it just helps you with your organization, let alone in a breach. So that's just something that I've noticed. The whole reason this car rant started was noticing how people behave with breaches. People, when they experience a breach, some people want to cover it up. And those are the same people that live in that organization of fear. All right. Thanks, everybody.